To say that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a success is an understatement. The MCU is currently in its fourth phase and is showing no signs of stopping. And when the shows and movies don't stop, the merch don't stop. And merch includes video games. Here's my list of the top 5 Marvel video games. For this list, I am including games from every era of Marvel, not just games released during the MCU era. Also, I'm only including games of just Marvel characters, so Marvel vs. Capcom won't be showing up here. Lastly, I'm only including the games that I played, which means I cannot include Guardians as I haven't played it yet. Anyway, here's the list. Number 5, X-Men, the arcade game. I love beat-em-ups. The concept is simple. It's just you and your buddy against a squad of goons. Konami was giving Capcom a run for its money, and while The Punisher is an amazing game, it can't quite compare to the spectacle that is the 6-player juggernaut of the X-Men arcade game. One thing to note here that there is a 4-player version of the Cab. I'm not sure which of the two was more common, but to my knowledge no other beat-em-up has more than 6 players in it other than X-Men the arcade game. The plot is pretty simple here. Magneto and the Brotherhood are gonna take over the world for mutant kind, and they start by abducting Professor X and Kitty Pryde, and it's up to the X-Men to stop them. It's a blast. Unfortunately, the only way to play it legit today is to buy the arcade 1-up cabinet, since the only home port of the game got delisted ages ago. This thing deserves a re-release. Number 4, Marvel Superheroes. Just like Capcom made some bangers for Disney back in the day, so too was the case for Marvel, which eventually became Disney. Anyway, Marvel Superheroes is a follow-up to Capcom's excellent X-Men Children of the Atom. This game had the usual suspects: Spider-Man, Captain America, Hulk, and some not-so-usual suspects. Shuma is a weird pick, but I'm glad he's now in the MCU. The conflict this time around centers on the Infinity Gems / Stones and Thanos, several years before the mainstream give a fuck about either of those things. It's a fast-paced fighting game with some interesting mechanics via the gem system. If you want to play it legit, you have to go for the arcade 1-up cabinet again, or if you want to, you can track down a copy of the PS1 or Saturn versions, because unfortunately it also got delisted. Yay! Number 3, X-Men Origins, Wolverine. PS3 and 360 version. This one fell under the radar for a lot of people, and it's easy to see why. It was a licensed game released in an era where licensed games were generally ass, especially if it was a movie tie-in. The movie in question was a guilty pleasure at best and a trash fire at worst. Plus, it's the reason why Deadpool took so many years to actually get made. The few who did give it a go would be really surprised to find a competent God of War clone. This game had no reason being as fun as it was, and that's all thanks to Raven Software, the guys directly responsible for Number 2, X-Men Legends, Rise of Apocalypse. Who knew that Marvel and dungeon crawlers could make such sweet music together? X-Men Legends 2 obviously is the sequel to Legends 1. This time around, the story is an adaptation of one of the most famous X-Men storylines, Age of Apocalypse.
Who the fuck are you?
No, not that one. Basically, you and 3 other players journey across different X-Men locations trying to prevent Apocalypse from killing a bunch of dudes. Raven Software would go on to make the first 2 Ultimate Alliance games, further cementing their status as one of the GOATs of Marvel game development. Before we get to number 1, I want to list some honorable mentions. Hulk Ultimate Destruction. It's a sandbox game where you play as the Hulk and break shit. Yes, it's on this video. Marvel Ultimate Alliance series. If you loved X-Men Legends like I did, then you would be a fool not to at least try something from this trilogy. Ultimate Spider-Man. If not for the art style alone, it's definitely worth a look. It isn't as polished as some of the other Spider-Man titles, but I feel it controls way better than the Neversoft games. Deadpool. While the gameplay is kinda average, the writing and the humor is perfect. Sadly, it got delisted twice. Lego Marvel Superheroes. It's Legos and Marvel, enough said. Spider-Man 2. This one was a huge deal. The movie is a contender for one of the best film sequels ever, and was the best Spider-Man game ever made at the time. However, number 1, Marvel's Spider-Man. Holy shit, this game is amazing. Pun intended. Not since the Arkham games has a game completely nailed a comic book character, and not since Spider-Man 2 has a company completely nailed the feel of Spider-Man or his world. I don't know if it was Marvel's call or Insomniac's not to have this Spider-Man be a tie-in to the MCU, but it was a great call. That gave the game the freedom to be its own thing. The storyline is compelling, the gameplay is addictive. Hell, there's been times where I just zoned out swinging around New York because it was just that fun. Web-slinging in Spider-Man games have become the white whale of just about every developer post Spidey 2. Nobody could top it until this bad boy came along. It's easily my favorite PS4 game, and the only one I did Platinum for, and I don't give a fuck about trophies or achievements. That is one of the highest compliments I can give. Spider-Man 2 is a ways away, but you can bet your ass I'll be there day one. Also, play Miles Morales and turn on the Spider-Verse suit. That shit is wild. Nice.